Philip had a little furniture, which he had gathered as he went along. An armchair that he had bought in Paris, and a table, a few drawings, and the small Persian rug which Cronshaw had given him. His uncle had offered a fold-up bed for which, now that he no longer let his house in August, he had no further use. And by spending another £10, Philip bought himself whatever else was essential. He spent 10 shillings on putting a corn-colored paper in the room. He was making his parlor, and he hung on the walls a sketch which Lawson had given him of the Quai des Grands Augustins, and the photograph of the odalisque by Ingres, and Manet's Olympia, which in Paris had been the objects of his contemplation while he shaved, to remind himself that he too had once been engaged in the practice of art. He put up a charcoal drawing of the young Spaniard Miguel Ajuria. It was the best thing he had ever done. A nude standing with clenched hands, his feet gripping the floor with a peculiar force, and on his face that air of determination which had been so impressive. And though Philip after the long interval saw very well the defects of his work, its associations made him look upon it with tolerance. He wondered what had happened to Miguel. There is nothing so terrible as the pursuit of art by those who have no talent. Perhaps, worn out by exposure, starvation, disease, he had found an end in some hospital, or in an access of despair had sought death in the turbid Seine. But perhaps with his southern instability, he had given up the struggle of his own accord, and now, a clerk in some office in Madrid, turned his fervent rhetoric to politics and bullfighting. Philip asked Lawson and Hayward to come and see his new rooms, and they came, one with a bottle of whiskey, the other with a pâté de foie gras, and he was delighted when they praised his taste. He would have invited the Scotch stockbroker too, but he had only 3 chairs, and thus could entertain only a definite number of guests. Philip attended now lectures on medicine and on surgery. On certain mornings in the week, he practiced bandaging on outpatients glad to earn a little money. And he was taught auscultation and how to use the stethoscope. He learned dispensing. He was taking the examination in materia medica in July, and it amused him to play with various drugs, concocting mixtures, rolling pills, and making ointments. He seized avidly upon anything from which he could extract a suggestion of human interest. He saw Griffiths once in the distance, but, not to have the pain of cutting him dead, avoided him. Philip had felt a certain self-consciousness with Griffiths' friends, some of whom were now friends of his, when he realized they knew of his quarrel with Griffiths, and surmised they were aware of the reason. One of them, a very tall fellow, with a small head and a languid air, a youth called Ramsden, who was one of Griffiths' most faithful admirers, copied his ties, his boots, his manner of talking and his gestures, told Philip that Griffiths was very much hurt, because Philip had not answered his letter. He wanted to be reconciled with him. "Has he asked you to give me the message?" asked Philip. "Oh, no. I'm saying this entirely on my own," said Ramsden. "He's awfully sorry for what he did, And he says you always behaved like a perfect brick to him. I know he'd be glad to make it up. He doesn't come to the hospital because he's afraid of meeting you. And he thinks you'd cut him. I should. It makes him feel rather wretched, you know. I can bear the trifling inconvenience that he feels with a good deal of fortitude, said Philip. He'll do anything he can to make it up. How childish and hysterical. Why should he care? I'm a very insignificant person. And he can do very well without my company. I'm not interested in him anymore.
Was it beneficial? I made a video with the mind of studying together. It continues. I'll see you again.